Welcome to In the Studio on Davis Media Access. I'm Tim Gaffaney. Way back on December 23rd, 1977, the Davis Parks and Recreation Department mounted a single production of the Davis Children's Nutcracker. Directed by Davis Institution Bob Bowen, with sets made from cardboard boxes, a cast of 75 children inaugurated a holiday tradition that continues 46 years later. This year, the City of Davis will present the 45th production of the Nutcracker, now with a cast of 250 children ages 6 to 12, and they'll mount 6 performances in early December at the Veterans Memorial Theater. Well, here to tell us more about the Nutcracker is Robert Schulz, who serves as the Media Services Specialist with the City of Davis. Robert, thanks so much for being here today to talk about the children's
Of course.
Nutcracker. So, back in 1977, what was the inspiration for starting the event back then?
So the story, as I have heard it from Bob Bowen, is that, as you mentioned, at the time he was working for the Parks and Community Services Department. He was a recreation supervisor and oversaw a bunch of different recreation programs. And he was feeling like they were all pretty standard, the kinds of things that you would expect if you think, city recreation program. And he was looking to do something a little more creative. And he had come across a school play version of the Nutcracker ballet in a magazine. And he thought that that looked like an interesting thing to do. Bob had a background in drama. And then a few years earlier, in 1974, the Veterans Memorial Center had just been finished construction, and the city had a new theater space that was not in that first few years not being used at the end of the year. And so Bob kind of put those things together and thought it would be a great idea to try doing a child-specific version of the Nutcracker. And so, as you mentioned, that first year, they had a small cast, did one show. I think the number I heard was closer to 50, not 75, but that's history for you.
Okay.
And they basically started the program, and however many kids they got in the show, they figured out how to fit them in, and that kind of set the pattern going forward. And then again, the other thing is, it was conceived as a recreation program. And what that really meant is that the focus was on the participants having a good time, maybe learning something, but it was really oriented around the kids, not a traditional theater production that's focused on putting on the best possible show and all the stress and challenges that can come with that. And that's, I think, a thing that's carried through to today, is that really at the core, this is a recreation program, and the focus is on the kids having a good time while they're doing the show.
That's great. And I'm sure there's absolutely no stress involved with one of these productions.
Oh, no, not at all.
Well, maybe you've partly answered this next question then already, but why is this so important to the community? I mean, why has the City of Davis continued to make this commitment for all these years?
So, I mean, I think a couple different things. One is, from just kind of the straight recreation programming standpoint, is it was popular. It worked. It achieved its goal. It grew and grew over the years. And it sort of has become a tradition for a portion of our community to participate and go see the show. Again, and I think kind of that getting, as a fun thing for the kids, it's also for a lot of people, a lot of the kids, it's their first exposure to theater, both actually as an audience member or as a participant. And it is an amazingly low barrier to entry way for a kid to get a taste of what it's like to be in theater, to get up on stage in front of an audience, to learn lines, to learn some choreography or stage movement, and do that in a very low stress, comparatively speaking, environment, with your friends that you go to school with, and you all have stories to tell with each other about after. And you start as a snowflake, and you move up through the different groups as you get older if you keep coming back and doing it. Um, so I think I think it's kind of at that level, it's a lot of different things. Ultimately, now, as you mentioned, 45 years. How many things happen in a community that have lasted 45 years? Very few. So I think there's a sort of a for all of us who are working on the show, and I think hopefully participating in it, there's a feeling of carrying forward that legacy of this thing that so many people have found an enjoyable experience. For those of us who value the arts and theater in particular, um, a program that introduces kids to the performing arts in a way that is fun and enjoyable, um, and kind of meets them where they are and what they're able to bring to the show is just a really good thing to keep around.
That's great. Well, so further on that, on putting the show on and whatnot, and especially as it's grown from 50 to 250, what does it take to put on a show like this in terms of human resources, for example, and does the production rely on volunteers or paid staff?
Mhm. So that has shifted over the years. Certainly in the early days, it was much fewer staff and much more volunteers. As the show got bigger and took more time, it shifted more to a staff process, um, because you know managing the number of volunteers needed, just kind of the overall change in what the standards for working with children are and everything. We've pretty much moved to all staff. We still use some volunteers. The Parks Community Services Department has a volunteer program where they bring in high school kids who are interested in perhaps working in recreation in the summer camp programs. They have an opportunity at a younger age to come in as a volunteer, work with existing staff, learn the ropes, figure out if being a recreation leader is something they want to do, and then an opportunity to kind of step up and get hired with the
Mhm.
city later. So we still have those folks volunteering. In terms of the number of staff on the technical side, which is where I mostly work. This year, we're about 10 people between all of the technical aspects, lighting, sound, stage manager, stage crew, sets, props, costuming. On the side with the kids, working with each of the groups. Usually each group has 2 to 3 leaders who are one volunteer and 1 or 2 staff members. I think this year with the number of groups and the number of kids, we're probably in 2 dozen or so. So you're looking about 3 dozen, 30 to 40 staff overall running the show each year. Um, and
Mhm.
as the number of participants go up and down, that shifts a little, but that's probably a good ballpark number.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, in addition to some of those changes you've just noted there, and by the way, I should note I was looking through some of the archive of
Yeah.
programs from 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I saw your name in there back in the day. I can't remember if it was in the 80s or 90s, but it looked like you were doing some work there 20, 30 years ago.
So I actually first was involved in 1987. A friend of mine, John Lee, who was at that time the technical director of the show, basically the person in charge of all of the technical side of the production, was also starting video recording the shows. And he asked me if I would come and run video camera for him. Um, and so I came, I did it. I saw, okay, this is interesting, strange, kind of strange thing. Lots of kids on the stage doing little dances and whatnot, but it was fun and enjoyable. He asked me to come back the next year, and of course, as you do in those kind of things, and he said, oh, and would you mind also helping us with little set construction work and whatnot? So he sucked me in.
Hmm.
And so I have been involved in various roles in the production ever since. Again, started with just the videotaping, helping out with some of the pre-show set
Mhm.
work and construction. Later on, stage crew, eventually stage manager, um,
Mhm.
the show,
Hmm.
and then a number of years ago now took over basically the technical director role, which is again overseeing kind of all of the tech side. Obviously, I don't do all of it. There's people who are much better at lighting design than I am. There's people much better at sound design than I am who do those roles. Um, but kind of the overall coordination, the knowledge of okay, here's how you install the giant tree that grows. Here's how this set piece gets set up. When you take it out of storage, it's been partially disassembled. Here's how you put it back together. This year I've had to rebuild several new props, so there's going to be a couple new little things that we'll be seeing in the show this year that I'm not going to give away. Um,
Mm.
and so, it
Okay.
as someone who actually, while I've primarily worked in the video um, field, I always have had a soft spot for technical theater. And then the whole other piece is, as you mentioned, you had been going through the archives and looking at the pictures and stuff. So I am also the closest thing the city has to an official photographer. And a lot of those pictures for the last 20 years are pictures I've taken. And so that's
Mm.
another thing I love, just being at the show, kind of being in the background and trying to catch those moments during the rehearsals and during the show with the kids, having what I hope is a really good time.
That's great. Well, speaking of staffing and whatnot, am I correct that you have a new director of the Nutcracker this year? And
Yes,
if
we
so,
have
I
an
wondered if you could tell us a little bit about her and why she was chosen for this role.
absolutely. Teresa Salas is our new director for this year. She is originally from Chile. She has a background, obviously, in directing and stage production. She just recently finished her MFA at UC Davis, and while I was not directly involved in the hiring process, certainly in the conversations of what we are looking for in a director, and she really got what the show is about, that focus on the kids, on the experience the
Mm.
kids are having in the show, that it is supposed to be a fun experience for them. And if we can get them to learn a little bit about theater and be interested in doing more theater in the future, that's great. But my understanding is, she really got that in the conversations I've had with her since, and some opportunities. We started rehearsals this week, some opportunities watching her with the kids during rehearsals. You know, I really feel like she does get what the soul of this show is about. So I'm
Mhm.
really looking forward to see what she's gonna do with the show this year. Um, and so far have been really enjoying seeing what I've seen.
Well, that's
Yep.
fantastic. Well, Robert, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about the Davis Children's Nutcracker. As a reminder, performances are coming up first week of December this year. I believe they'll run from Wednesday, December 6th through Sunday, December 10th, with evening performances at 7 p.m. Wednesday through Saturday, and then two 2 p.m. matinees, so two matinees at 2 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. And all performances are at the Veterans Memorial Theater, 203 East 14th Street in Davis. And I think the website has been displayed up on the screen there, but for more information, interested individuals can go to thecityofdavis.org/nutcracker, and tickets will be available through that site beginning November 27th. Is that correct?
I believe
Okay.
so,
And I've
yes.
been,
And I'll
okay, great.
just add that we have a history of selling out. So if you are interested in seeing a show, buy your tickets early.
That's fantastic. Well, again, Robert, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, everyone out there, for joining us. This is Tim Gaffany, and you've been watching In the Studio on Davis Media Access.